We talk to the folks from Amazing Hearing about hearing loss, and we talk about hearing aids, but we also never really talk about how hearing works in the first place. We're going to cover some of that and more today with Ann Mundell-Knoll and Dr. Gabby Rodriguez. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So I want to talk about, you have a big diagram up for us, how hearing actually works and all the processes we go through to get the sound from outside into our brains.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because we have the outer ear, the ear canal that leads to the eardrum, and then we have the middle ear, which is those three little bones, and then we have the inner ear, that thing that looks like a snail.
Right.
And then it leads to the brain. So what we don't realize is that the two sides talk to each other, but some things can block that sound. And so that's kind of where that hearing loss comes in.
Well, I feel like that, when you look at that, it's like there are so many areas where we could have a problem here, we could have a problem like built up of earwax or something going on with the bones or the drum. And then the snail thing, like you said, that sends a signal. So are there just as many, you have to diagnose where the problem is before you can help treat the problem usually?
Exactly. So as audiologists, we have the ability to diagnose and treat that. So we look in the ear at the ear canal, make sure it's healthy. Not only wax could get in the ear canal, but if anybody was an old swimmer or surfer, they might develop something that's called exostosis, which is a calcium bump.
You call it swimmer's ear, right?
Kind
Sometimes?
of. That's a little bit different.
That's different. There's even yet another
there
thing.
you go. Yeah, swimmer's ear is an ear infection that you get from swimming. But yes, we can have an ear canal problem. We could have an eardrum problem. We could have fluid in the middle ear. Like you said, we could have a stiffening of the bones from genetic. It's called otosclerosis, where there's a stiffening. But mainly it's that inner ear, that cochlea, that is the cause of most hearing losses.
Okay. So Dr. Gabby, there are a number of issues that can come up when we have hearing loss that affect the rest of the body, and I was looking at the list you sent, and it's amazing the number of them. Can you go through some of them with us?
Yeah, so some of these things kind of sneak in. Not all of these are obvious comorbidities to hearing loss, but some of the more obvious is social isolation. That can lead to anxiety, depression. If you have a hearing loss and you know you're going to struggle in an environment, you might stop going into that environment altogether, but that's going to negatively impact other issues and other aspects of your life.
Right. And there's all sorts of things like, you have you said the depression. People can actually fall and lose balance and those kinds of things too?
Yes. So in the inner ear, back to the structures, not only is the inner ear responsible for hearing, but balance as well. So three bones called the semicircular canals, which are basically telling you where you are in time and space. So closely related.
Now, how does that work with Alzheimer's dementia?
Yeah, so basically the brain can't process what it can't hear. So if we're trying to get the signal up to the brain and we're losing some of the volume, so a hearing loss, the signal is not transmitted to the brain appropriately. And the entire pathway up through the brain can get weaker over time, kind of like when you have an arm in a cast and it can atrophy. Same idea, brain, nerve can all kind of atrophy and become weaker and weaker over time.
Okay, and so do we sometimes attribute things that are going with hearing loss to dementia? Like, oh, he just isn't remembering. Well, actually, maybe they're just not hearing. That's why they're not remembering. Is that one of the factors could be in there? It's
very sad how many times we see people come in with a recent dementia diagnosis or thoughts that it could be dementia. We get new appropriately fit hearing aids on and they're like a new person.
Oh, wow.
So that is one thing that research is starting to lean into more and more to really find out why are they related, how are they related, and what can we do about it.
Okay, so all sorts of things, and tell me about chronic kidney disease. I couldn't believe was linked to hearing somehow?
Yeah, so the kidney lining is the same kind of fluid that you actually have in your inner ear.
Okay.
So this goes all the way back to when you're in utero and how the body's kind of built, in the womb, and the same things that can affect your kidneys can negatively impact your ears. It's pretty crazy.
So when we talk about hearing loss and we talk about loss of communication and those kinds of things, and the brain, kind of a brain balance, what are we talking about there exactly? What are the things that kind of really atrophy to where we're falling, we're having real challenges there?
So what's happening is the pathway where the sound is going from the ear up to the brain is diminished. So because you're not getting a full spectrum of sound, the brain has to work with the elements that it has.
Okay.
And part of it is, like Dr. Gabby referred, is that it is the balance system. It's the same nerve for the hearing and the balance that goes up to the brain.
Okay.
So when you have a diminished system, the sound is not getting up, the nerve pathway is not getting up as strong as it should, then you have to work with that limited input, and that's where the brain starts to have issues, because it says, wait a minute, I don't have all the information. When you put a hearing aid on, it gives the brain a full spectrum of sound, and then people have more stability. Like, you don't even realize that with hearing, we have balance, because balance comes from our eyes, our ears, and the bottom of our feet.
Okay.
So if we have an issue with our ears and we improve that, then the brain says, oh, I know where I am in space and time. Oh, I heard somebody coming up from over here. I'm more grounded. All those things come together.
Okay, so when people, elderly folks, maybe have more prone to falling, is that usually because they're also having hearing issues, which I didn't
For sure.
really, I've never made that connection as well. Older people just don't have the greatest balance, but it can really be connected with the ears, right?
For sure.
Wow, that's incredible. So what is some of the new research out of the Mayo Clinic that, in terms of like what's going on, what are the latest in terms of hearing and
Yeah, so research, like I said, has been leading into this connection more and more. This is a big one that came out. Basically what they looked at was, does wearing a hearing aid in older adults with hearing loss have impact on cognitive function? And they found that they followed about 977 people over 3 years. Wearing a hearing aid over those 3 years, we were looking at 48% slowed down the loss of thinking and cognition, which is huge. And so that not only should be motivating, that if you're wearing a hearing aid, you're doing the right thing to keep your brain healthy, but it should also, on the other hand, if you've had a hearing aid that you maybe haven't loved, we should revisit that, because it's hugely important for things outside of hearing.
And there's also fatigue and cognitive decline. Like fatigue, is it because we're working so hard to try to hear, and it's just we're taxing our brain, we're taxing our senses?
Absolutely. If I said I took my 2 dogs for a walk, and you don't hear the S on dogs, you're already filling in that blank. She said 2, so she must have said dogs. The conversation's carrying on, and now you're playing catch up the entire time. So we give the ears and the brain what it needs. The whole system can calm down. It's getting what it needs and can follow along easily.
And then it's also, like you said, it's also linked to cognitive decline and the isolation that feels that when we're not hearing things, so we're not going to events. And so there's a lot of connectivity there that's really interesting in terms of what the Mayo Clinic found out for you guys.
Yeah.
Also, can we talk about what can be done in terms of like, what are some of the most important things we can do right now in hearing loss? And connection to our phones is one thing that is really challenging for, especially for seniors when they're already having hearing trouble. So what's one of the things we can do there?
Starting with the hearing test, find out what's going on. If we find that there's a hearing loss, I tell all my patients, I care how you hear. That's important for your quality of life. But even above that, I care how your brain is doing. And so wearing the hearing aid 10 to 12 hours a day is really the sweet spot to keep your brain healthy and functioning. New technology has come out that has also had huge improvements. The Oticon Intent basically is scanning the room, recognizing what you do want to hear, so speech sounds, bringing that up, and decreasing background noise.
And that connects to your phone. You can adjust that right there in your phone.
You have a little bit of control on your phone. You get your phone calls straight to the ears.
That's the amazing part to me. This phone call goes straight to the ear.
If you have to wear them, they might as well do something fun.
Yeah. One of the fun parts about the Oticon Intent, though, with hands-free, is that you can tap, and now you don't even have to pull your phone out of your purse. So if you're walking your dog and you have coffee in your hand and the phone rings, tap it, you answer it.
You don't have to hit yourself that hard, do you? You're really
if you have an iPhone, no, what you're going to do is you're just going to hit the hearing aid. Yep. But just making sure you hit the hearing aid, but that way it's so easy.
And the AI in these things is amazing in terms of being able, how it knows to cancel out this kind of noise versus that kind of noise.
Basically, background noise is a pretty steady state, low frequency sound. Speech has a lot of peaks and valleys because of intonation, diction, what have you. So the hearing aid's recognizing this peak and valley, bringing that up, and doing its best to keep this at a normal level.
And one more we want to talk about, the Windex moment. Tell me about Windex.
So it's Widex. There's no N.
There's no N.
No, but
I'm not
it's
cleaning my windows. I got it.
yeah, Widex. Theirs is all based on speed processing, and because their hearing aid is so fast in processing, it can give a really sharp, clear sound. So even people who have very normal hearing can get fit and love the hearing aid, and they are amazing for people with tinnitus. So if you have
Okay.
ringing in your ears, it's the go-to product.
I might have to talk to you guys about that one. I've mentioned that I have that, and I've never done anything about it. Oh my goodness!
One
All
of
right.
these days.
Real quick before we go, you guys are still doing the recycling at your place, right? Bringing in
We
the cans and
are.
bottles.
Yes.
Fantastic. We'll make sure that's a drop-off place for you guys. Amazing hearings right in the Trader Joe's parking lots, and people can come down there and make appointments and get the hearing checked. I might have to come in and see you guys.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
When we come
us.
back, Bree's going to be here with the Old Pros. Stay with us.